And yeah, let's make more unicorns, right? Let's make more first time home birthing moms. So I never even looked at that way. And you're right. Most of the people I know that have had a home birth, it's because something happened the first time. And we start at one side of it. And I like swang way over to the other side. Like I just took off running, like, oh, what's as
Yeah.
far away as I can get from whatever happened to me. And gosh, if we don't have to do that, imagine the beautiful babies and mothers and the relationships that they're going to have and all the problems that we're going to solve without even trying, like with breastfeeding and
Hmm.
postpartum depression and all of those things. And yeah, that journey can certainly be softened if we help
Absolutely.
people right from the beginning. You can have this too. Like it's
Mm.
normal and it's great. And all those rare things like in home birth after cesarean and a home birth with twins and babies being born in the caul and one of them breech, like all of those things, maybe they used to happen a lot more. We just don't even know about them anymore because every baby is
Mm.
sort of born the same way in the hospital or whatever. But these cool variations of normal that shouldn't cause any fear at all
Hmm.
can be super beautiful and healthy, everything
Yeah.
healthy and normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And
Between you and me, right where you are right in this moment, is exactly where you were meant to be.
good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Joygasmic Life Podcast. I am your hostess, Elena Harder, and I am so glad to have you here today. If you are an awakening woman, a conscious mother, a woman on a journey to bring about the best for your family and create an enlightened experience of being a child and a woman and a mother and partner in your world, I absolutely I'm so grateful and so glad that you have found your way here. This podcast collects not only my own personal stories, things I would have done better had I known better, but also the beautiful stories of many hundreds of other women and men who have been through the consciousness awakening journey, who are here to share their stories, to inspire you to know that you can recover from mental health challenges, from postpartum depression, from challenges with traumatic births, and just the life in 21st century, as well as beautiful actionable tips, exercises where we walk you through practical things that have really helped us, and the journey of becoming a joygasmic mother, one who handles absolutely every challenge with
It's time
grace and
to
ease and
awaken, to
understands
bring
that
all the
everything is
parts of
here to
yourself
awaken her
back
deeper,
to this present
to
moment
create more
and
empowerment and more
explore the
pleasure in her
joy
life, even the
that
challenging
is
things.
your
So that
life
sounds juicy.
when you
Listen up
live
because we have
fully
got a
out,
wonderful episode
fully
for you
expressed,
today.
fully harnessing the joygasmic potential of your body and yourself. Anything is possible, and especially we are here to tell you that deep and fulfilling love is possible and is available for you when you choose that for yourself.
So, welcome to Rachelle to the Joygasmic Life Podcast. I'm so grateful to have you here today, and I'm excited to hear your story.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, tell me, so I think you're a mom of 4, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you get into? So, I saw you were a birth doula, so you're doing some of that work, and then
Mhm.
you've also got this twin HVAC story. So, I'm excited to hear that a little bit later. How did you get into birth work?
Um, it all started actually with the birth of my first child. He was born 11 years ago. I was a single mom at the time, but I was kind of with my partner. Like we had just had the sort of relationship talk, and then I got really sick, and he ran me to the emergency room, and the doctor with the worst bedside manner on the planet was like, well, you're pregnant. And I was like, actually, no, I didn't. He's like, oh, and it's twins. And I was like, didn't, okay. Um,
Whoa.
so that was kind of how my child rearing career, if you will, started. And it ended up only one of the babies survived. Um,
Wow.
it was just one of those one gets reabsorbed type stories or whatever.
Okay. Wow.
But anyway, I was young. I was in the military. I was super fit, like running tons, half marathons, everything. I just kind of assumed that the medical community would take care of me. Like I could just walk in and have a baby. I'm healthy.
Like so many women do. Yeah.
And pretty much the system just ran me over. And it was the day before my child was due. And they're like, oh, well, we gave nature long enough. We're just going to induce you today. And I was like, okay, you know what you're doing. Thing.
Yeah.
Ended up in a cesarean. It was awful. It was just, everything turned out fine. He was fine, but I didn't know, I guess I didn't know what had happened to me. Like, I'm just kind of wandering around thinking, this, like, I feel horrible, sort of just processing what happened. And everyone around me was so happy. I assumed that everything that happened to me was all right. And I never asked any questions about it. And I never realized that what I experienced did not have to happen, or it wasn't normal and it was traumatic, all of those things. Until I was pregnant for my second, this time super planned. And we were very, very excited. And I had watched the movie, The Business of Being Born. And it catapulted me. I'm a research junkie by nature. And I just started devouring everything I could find. And that's when I started crying, pretty much. Like once I found out, I started crying, and it didn't end until I figured out, okay, that was not normal to have that type of birth the first time. And I was Googling doulas. We had just moved to a new area, and bless her heart, the very first doula I called ended up being my mentor later and my trainer. But she just sat on the phone while I cried and just let me unload on her. And she was amazing. So that led me down the path to my first home birth. And from then on, it just sort of progressed from there. And once you have one at home, like, that's it. Yeah.
There's no going back. There's no going back to the hospital after that, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you shared there, just about like once you started doing that research and seeing like what normal physiological birth was about, right? Then the C-section has got a whole different context. You've got a grief process that you need to go through at that process to sort of go like, oh, I was in denial. Now let me really accept what's going on. Let me process that and move through it.
And realizing for so many parents that that have an unplanned cesarean and the emotions that they have and everything that goes through it, really knowing that it is okay to feel like that. And it's okay to be maybe even angry about what happened and to grieve the idea that you had of what your birth was going to be like. And then kind of what happened on the other side, those kind of things are just learning how to be so supportive of moms and letting them know, like, it's definitely not all sunshine and roses and it's all right.
Yeah, definitely not. The journey of motherhood is not all sunshine and roses and cute baby butts that look beautiful. Yeah. It's like everything everywhere. Yeah. What was your grief process around that time like? Like you mentioned the doula sort of holding space for you. What else? Yeah.
Just I don't know, just really feeling like I had been run over, like I had been a cog in a system that I was completely unprepared to deal with. That I thought, I'm great, I'm healthy, like this should be no problem. I mean, I took the hospital's birth class. I mean, I definitely, at that point of time in my military career and everything, I just, for lack of better terms, I'd always conquered everything with no problem. You know what I mean? Like I just assumed like, I'm great. And I had not prepared myself at all. I hadn't taken any really good, like a private childbirth education class and, things like that. That's always my number one thing when people talk to me, they're like, hey, I'm pregnant, and they're always really excited. And that's the number one piece of advice I always give to people is just find yourself a really great childbirth education class and dive into it, because you'll learn so much from that. And that's sort of your diving off point to figuring out, okay, well, how do we want to do this? How do we want to bring this kid into the world? So
absolutely. Yeah. And I hear that because there's so many moms who are like, I'm healthy, everything's good, myself included. I was like, I'm fine. Turns out I had undiagnosed depression prior to giving birth to my child that then like catapulted itself into postpartum depression. And then I had to start looking. I was like, oh, this has been an issue for some years. I just thought this was normal, right?
Yeah.
Sort of shifting and changing that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do start to educate around what normal physiological birth is, it's a big paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were some of the keys in terms of your shifting? You sort of started in that sort of a military model. And I can imagine that conquering everything, is a very masculine, linear, like goal oriented, whereas the process of birth is like surrendering, letting go, like deconstructing all of that. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
So I would say that to this day, that's probably always a constant struggle for me. That's my personality. Like I'm a Enneagram, as I pronounce it. I'm an 8. I'm a fighter. I'm a doer. I always want action. I always want to fix everything. And birth is the total opposite. And I would say it probably wasn't until the birth of the twins. So my first was a cesarean. My second was my first natural birth at home, and it was a doozy. Like it went great. It was textbook. It was beautiful, but it was eye-opening to like the raw power of birth. Basically, when it was over, my mom was like feeding me spoonfuls of yogurt, and I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to be doing that again. So but it was awesome. And it's always, even we were talking about surrender, right? So even the journey of parenting and everything, it's just a constant humbling of yourself and realizing that you don't have to be the boss all the time. You don't have to always be like the head person and on top of everything and on your game. And I really realized that during the twins' birth, like if I could package that birth up and like gift it to every mom, I would. Like it was the most empowering, like awe-inspiring moment of my life. Like it was so great. It was right here, actually. I'm almost sitting in the spot.
Wow. Yes.
And yeah. So just, I think I realized that I don't have control over it. It's a natural process that I need to kind of just let happen and let go. And when I learned to do that in a lot of things in life, everything was a lot easier. And I've run into that with clients as well, like other birthing mothers that have a lot of similarities with myself. And that's always something that is hard because you have to work through it on your own. Like your doula can't help you, your midwife can't help you. Like you really just have to learn that you're not going to run this show. And it's a hard pill to swallow for some of us.
It's a tricky lesson, especially when, we've been praised and rewarded our whole life for doing the thing, to make the thing happen, to be the right thing. And it's like, that's just not the energy of birth. So I'd love to, like, let's unpack your sort of twin experience. Cause you said that was a really pivotal thing. So, a couple years after your first home birth, or like when did you find out you were pregnant with twins? What was that journey like?
My middle child is, hold on, we're going to do math here in public.
Yeah.
She's 9. And then about 2 years after that, we started talking about a third, and we got pregnant for our third, and I had a miscarriage at 12 weeks, which was, that's a whole nother story to walk through, but just learning through that, how to support other people that are going through that. It was, it was heartbreaking because, once you already have a child and then you're expecting your second, like the second that those lines show up on the birth test or the pregnancy test, you love them. And you love everything about them and everything that little being is. And my mind, of course, like the planner, logistician, I'm like, okay, well, where's the car seat going to go? And who's going to do this? And, everything's planned already. And they're just this tiny little beating heart. And so when you lose them, it's like, everything that you had for them, this whole world that you created for them, you're not only grieving them, but, everything their relationship already was with their grandparents and siblings and everything. So that was a tough one, but we weren't really trying to get pregnant after that because I just needed some time. But 2 months after that, I was. And to be honest, I swear to you to this day that I almost know the moment of conception. It was the craziest thing. And I think it's because it happened double. That's the only thing that I can think of, because I was sick immediately. I swear to you, these tiny little succubuses were just like doing their best.
That's what they do.
To run me down. And I was only like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks along, like very early in pregnancy. And I called up my midwife, who wasn't even my midwife yet, because we were in another new area, but I knew her and I was planning on her being my midwife. And I called her. I'm like, okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant for twins. And I wondered how far along I have to be before you can really tell me that I am, because I'm pretty sure like this pregnancy is far different than anything else I've experienced with any of the others.
Because your body's pulling twice the nutrients, right? It's just like, it just needs that much more.
Yeah. And I learned afterward, like maybe halfway through my pregnancy about, and I'm also not certain how to pronounce this as well. Hyperemesis scaravardium, is that correct? Something like that. Basically, when you're incredibly sick, women have to be almost hospitalized for their quote unquote morning sickness, which is sick.
Right.
That's where I was with the twins. I never had to go to the hospital, but it was me like focusing on like taking a drink of water without throwing it up. Like it was just so. Now I think back to it and I'm like, how did I ever make two people at the same time? Because I didn't come out of that until around maybe 13 or 14 weeks when I could really like, I can drink water now without throwing up. Hallelujah. So I was very, very worried about that. And around about, I think it might've been about that time when we had our first scan. And I knew right away that we were going to have a home birth. And I started, we were in a newer area, but I'm like, okay, well, let's find our midwives. Let's get this figured out. Cause I wanted to have two there. And the midwife I was working with, my main midwife, her name was Linda Healy. And she is just like the tiniest angel of birth. I don't know how else to describe her, but she just walks into a room and she like calms your soul. Like she's a midwife since she was born. I don't know. I wasn't planning on having an ultrasound, but she highly encouraged it just so we could figure out where everybody was in there. And also to confirm that, yes, it was twins, even though that's what I was assuming. And
you
so
knew.
We went to the ultrasound with my husband and my mom and my sister. And it was kind of funny.
Like a whole party.
Yeah, well, the first times around, my family wasn't nearby, and this time we were nearby family. So it was pretty exciting. And so the ultrasound tech was she was darling, she's taking the wand here and then here and then here and then here. I'm like, well, there's obviously two heads on the screen, and she's like, okay, well, I have something to tell you. And she was very stern about it. And she's like, well, I'm pretty sure you're having twins. And, everyone just starts screaming in the room. It's my sisters, so we're out of control. And, so that confirmed it for me. Yes. Okay. I assumed. And then she's like, well, and I'm also going to have to charge you double for this ultrasound. And I was like, what? Are you kidding? I mean, I thought she was joking, and it was just, she was very serious about it. It was quite funny. But we walked out and everyone was staring at us because of how loud in celebration we must have been. But I was like, I'm having twins,
Yeah.
So it was pretty fun.
Aww.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So then how did, you mentioned up sort of until about 13 weeks, you were feeling really sick. What did you do to manage that? People talk about ginger tea. How did you handle that?
Everything, all of the things. And to be honest, I probably should have sought a little more medical intervention. Looking back, I realized that there were times that I was probably at a point where I may have needed like IV or something, like just because of my state of dehydration. But again, there's that whole like conquering person inside my head that thinks that I don't need any help. But I just, I'm also really super into nutrition.
Yeah.
That's why we have this farm out back now and everything. So I was very, what's the word, like procedural about what I was eating, because
Yeah.
I knew that I wasn't getting very much. So I was just very careful knowing what I was putting in my body and making sure it was all like super great sources. I drank, I think the tea blend is called Facundi. And if you
Okay.
Google it, I'm not sure, I can't even remember where I ordered it from, but it's pretty much a blend. It has like nettle and red raspberry leaf and some other
Yeah.
things like that. A lot of things super high in vitamin K.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and some other things. I drank that every single night religiously, all the way through the pregnancy. That was one thing that always kind of calmed me down at night.
Yeah. I love that tea. I've been drinking it sort of preconception, just like, yeah, give me the
Yeah,
tea,
that's so
all
great.
those things.
Yeah, and we had been also kind of doing like a preconception diet. So I was eating tons of like pastured meat and raw milk and our own eggs back here and like all the leafy greens and stuff that I could handle. So I think going in, I was really healthy. And maybe that's what got me through like those really low points of being super sick.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. Sorry, my watch was talking to me.
That's okay.
Once I didn't have a very big window of a time where I could eat and then a time where I was like just too big to like fit too much food.
Hmm.
So I just was it was kind of a happy medium in there because that was just one thing that my midwife is constantly telling me, just like feed those babies and feed them really good food. Um,
Hmm.
and my goal was to get, she said, you can have a home birth with me, of course, as long as you're past 37 weeks. Um,
Mm.
that was her comfort point of delivering the babies at home. So I had a
Yeah.
backup OB. He was about an hour from here. I saw him once. Super gracious, amazing human, that was totally comfortable with everything I was doing. I'm like, so you're going to be the backup, and as long as you're okay with that, and he'd even heard of my midwife, so that relationship was really good. I was nervous about that,
Yeah.
knowing that a lot of care providers don't want to do dual care or be a backup, so to speak. But he was
Yeah.
great. And so I easily made it to 37 weeks, actually. My
Wow, that's
37-week
awesome.
checkup, I had 3 midwives in my living room. Um, my two main midwives in the backup, and my backup in case one of them couldn't make it. So just like a lot of beautiful, fluttering women around, like measuring and feeling and just celebrating. It was really fun. And the great thing was the entire time, both of the twins were head down, both of them.
Beautiful.
So we just planned on business as usual. And
Hmm.
at 39 weeks, yeah, so in between 37 and 39 weeks, it really started to get uncomfortable and painful. Like, I'm like, I'll be pregnant forever because it's going to be easier with them in than with them out. But at the same time, I remember waking up in the middle of the night in so much pain, just my hips,
Mm.
and just, I was huge. Luckily I'm 6 feet tall. I know you can't tell from this, but I have a lot of space, and that I know that's why I was given extra inches, because God knew I was going to win someday. But I would just wake up in the middle of the night and just go sit in the hot bathtub because I just,
Mm.
ah, looking
Yeah, because
back,
it would
that was
relax. It would like
yeah,
relax and
it
like
was like
soothe your
all I
body
wanted to
and
do was float. Like if I could have built myself a hot tub at that point, I would have done it overnight, no problem. Just spend the money so I could just sit there and float around until these babies are ready. Um,
hmm.
so at exactly 39 weeks to the day, it was a Sunday morning. My husband went to church because he ran sound, so he was there early in the morning, and I went out to let the chickens out, and I'm like, and contraction. All right, let's do this. Um,
Mm.
called them back home, and my sister, my older sister, was she is not a doula, but I wanted her to be like my birth partner along with my husband. She came over right away, and the older kids went to my mom's, and I'm pretty sure that my lead midwife came right away, and it was what time did I start? Around 9:30 or 10. And the babies were born at 3 and 3:12, I think,
So,
something like that. Or
yeah,
3.
precipitous labor. Whoosh,
It was
right?
it was like fast and textbook. Like it was just I don't know how else to say this, but I was rocking it. Like I had done it before and I knew what to expect and I just felt so strong. Like
Mm,
I wasn't afraid of anything. And my husband always told me looking back, he's like, that's what put me at ease. He's like, I'd look at you and you were great. You weren't afraid, you weren't nervous.
mm,
You were super strong. And he's like, so I was fine, I
mm,
I knew that you were comfortable and you knew what you were doing pretty much. And so I just
mm.
let it happen.
Beautiful.
Um, the fun part was, let's see, I spent most of my labor just kind of here in the bedroom. I'm very loud. I'm a very loud birther. I'm a super moaner. Um,
Yeah.
a lot, mostly on my hands and knees or on my knees, like up against the bed. And gosh, that's what's so great about home birth. Like your midwife, just like if you want to go crawl inside a closet and labor, like she'll let you if you want to be in the bathtub or on the toilet. Or gosh, with my first home birth I was like literally clawing on the wall, like hanging on to the door frame, fine, if that's what you want to have the baby, go ahead. And so
Yeah.
I was kind of holed up over here beside the bed, and looking back now I'm like, that was so inconvenient for her. She had to like come over here and check things, and she never said a word. She never asked me to move.
Mm,
Not once. She never said, maybe you'll be more comfortable over here. Like, nope, she knew this is for some reason where I chose, kind of like
mhm,
when your like cat like hides in your laundry basket and has kittens or whatever.
mhm,
That's kind of what I felt like.
mhm.
But
There was
yeah,
a
right here.
there was a mom I interviewed who said that before her child was born, she saw this like blue pillar of light in her house,
Hmm.
like psychically, right? She's just like, there's a pillar of light in the house, and she just knew that's where the baby was going to be born. And then like some hours later, sure enough, that's where the baby is born. And so I have this theory that there's like literally like a consciousness download, like the
Right.
soul's coming in, sort of like an energetic portal that's being built that's like in a single spot. So when you talk about like this is the spot where you're laboring, it's like, well, that's because that's the spot where the baby's born. So that's where you got to do the like the psychic consciousness work to like connect heaven and earth, right?
You know, I really like the way you put that. And this is kind of an aside, but the house that we live in is very old. I'm going to guess somewhere around 150 plus years old.
Wow.
It's a family home, so it hasn't always been in the family, but a lot of my ancestors lived here, and I
Mm,
were born here, and I know a few that died here. And
mm,
I'm very firm in my belief that birth and death should happen at home. And
mm,
so I know the people that have died here. And so I was really excited to have some birth here, because I feel like this house, maybe hasn't had that in a while, and to kind of reset the balance of life in a way. And that might
beautiful.
sound super kooky to some, but to me, it just feels like really like sort of just resetting the space or something.
I love
Um,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So I think, so the first baby was born. I was on my hands and knees, or on my knees right here beside the bed. And the really awesome part was that both of them were born en-caul, or in
mm,
the bag of with the bag of waters intact for both of them.
hmm. Wow.
So when the first baby was born, we were really excited because I I'm trying to think. I think my husband and the midwife caught him together, but I thought it was going to be. Oh, it was a boy. They're boy and girl, by the way. Surprise! I
Mm,
forgot to even say that. We did know that ahead of time, that it was going to be a boy and a girl. But I had always assumed this. I don't know. This little soul I felt was the girl.
mm,
Um, I thought she was going to be born first, and I was
mm,
very surprised when my son was born first. So we didn't really have a lot of surprises, but I was very surprised because I thought it was our girl. And so he was born, and so the midwife had to I pulled him up to me, and he was still in his sack, and she kind of had to break it around his head.
wow.
And so kind of the water gushed out like on us. It was really cool. I've never seen anything like that in the hundreds of birth videos I watched. So that was a really
Hmm.
cool experience. And he was just it was great, up on my stomach. I kind of pulled myself up into the bed and held him. And I knew that I had another baby to have, but I was also like, and there's a baby on me, like he's here. And it was so exciting. And, but I know at the time that my amazing midwife was, she already was listening and feeling and figuring out where that second baby was. And true to form, her name is Scarlett. And if you know her, you would recognize this in her personality, but she basically just kind of went like a starfish, and she turned herself over and got super comfortable and decided, I finally have the place to myself. And this is the space I've been needing. And she flipped herself breech. And which I was not concerned at all about. I think as long as you have a skilled midwife, I think it's a variation of normal. And
could you feel that in your belly, like when she turned?
I felt a lot of movement, but my womb had just gone from 2 to 1, so it was like a relaxed blob, basically.
Yeah, you're like, oh, thank God. Yeah.
But because of that, because of her turning breech, my midwife had me kind of come up. She did tell me where to go at this point. Had me turn over. So I wasn't on my back, but I was on my, just kind of pulled me forward on the bed, like pulled my pelvis forward. So that way, I actually started pushing right away. Like there was only a 12-minute delay. There wasn't much time in between there. Because she kind of mentioned, okay, it's time to have this baby now. And I actually don't know if it had anything to do with heart tones or just being breech or anything, but she just kind of looked at me and said, okay, we need to have this baby now. And I'm like, all right. And at the time, my son's still connected to me. So I kind of we sort of shimmy him over to, actually, I don't know if it was my husband or my sister. We just sort of handed him off, but he was still, connected. So that was funny. And I think I really just sort of gave a couple pushes, and that was amazing because since I was sitting kind of on the edge of the bed, I could see everything and like feel her with my hands, like feel her feet come out. And again, she was still in the bag of waters, and her feet kind of came out in the bag, and her feet, she just gave this like mighty kick with both of her feet and broke it herself. And so she broke her own bag. And as she kind of came out, the rest of her kind of slid out, excuse me, after that. And I was just like so in awe of her as this tiny little girl and her power, like I'm coming out like this, and just kind of her butt came out and then her legs came down and she broke her bag herself. And then the rest of her came. It was just like, she was very powerful. And I was like, dang, little girl, like you're ready to come out and rock this world. Like it was pretty neat. She took a little longer to come around, so to speak, because of being born backwards, basically, which I, again, was not nervous at all about, because I had seen as a doula a couple births like that. The baby comes out, instead of, like crying and screaming red, they're like sort of gray. And excuse me, they're not quite there yet. Soul wise or something. And so I wasn't nervous. I just kind of held her and we were talking to her, and I was like, okay, it's time to come now, and she just sort of like came into herself, like, okay, I'm ready to breathe now. And my husband told me later that that was the only time that he was afraid. And I was like, no, it wasn't. I don't know. I don't know why it didn't make me nervous, but she was completely fine, and the midwife was right there. They did administer, there was one homeopathic that they gave her right away, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, probably in her records. But we were all just kind of rubbing her and talking to her, and she just sort of woke up very quietly and looked around at all of us like, all right, we're here. And and
like you said, it's pretty it's within the realm of normal for babies to come out kind of gray and not necessarily like fully there, fully present. They've just been through a really intense experience. She was obviously really happy to stay inside the womb for a little bit more, like, oh, I get my space, right? Like you said. And so yeah, that might be part of why you weren't freaked out. And maybe if your husband didn't know that as deeply or hadn't seen it or hadn't, a lot of
Well,
the
yeah.
time ladies are doing more research around this kind of thing. So they've seen those experiences.
Yeah. And if the only thing you've seen is, a TV birth where a baby comes out screaming, or, to see a baby born so quietly could be a little bit unnerving, like,
Yeah.
why aren't they crying? Why aren't they making any noise?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. The only birth he'd seen was our daughter before. So,
Hmm.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes sense why he's a little freaked out, because it's like the first one came out, pink and rosy, and the second one came out gray, like, and there is often a blood distribution thing between twins sometimes as well. So I'm curious
Sure.
about that.
We were, gosh, if you start reading about being pregnant with twins at all, I think you will be scared, because a lot of the research out there, or even stories, seem very fear-based. And it's like, as soon as a care provider knows you have twins, like, they start assuming that something's going to go wrong, which,
Yeah.
their job is managing problems as
Yeah.
like obstetrician, right? Um, we had none. Like, I never for once even thought, like, I don't know, maybe it's just like my personality is just assumes that it's all going to be fine because
Hmm.
that's the way I do it. Um, but the twins were always head down. They both had separate sacks. They both had, they were not identical. Everything they had was separate. Um, Pretty much, I even say to this day, the only thing they had in common is they were born at the same time. Like, they're just, I mean, very, very different. Definitely twins in the way they live together, but none of those really cool twin things that you hear about, like fun languages and things like that. They don't have any of that,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
they are adorable brother and sister, and they will tell everyone around them that we are twins. And um, my son, so they're Baker and Scarlett are their names, and Baker will always tell people that Scarlett is my sister and we are twins, and she is smarter than me and she is faster than me. It's the
That's
way
funny.
they're crazy little 4-year-olds, but
Mm.
yeah, I can't believe that it's been that long. It's almost their birthday.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that journey for sure. I'm curious about that sort of like immediate postpartum and the placenta, because they're both in different sacs. Do you end up having like one placenta or two placentas that
Yeah, so
come out afterwards? Tell me about that.
I actually did not know. I thought if they have separate sacs, I just assumed that there were separate placentas, but it was really one giant one that
Okay.
was divided. Um, so postpartum, so I handed off babies. We waited. I don't think that the cords were cut until after I delivered the placenta. I think that's what I had asked for. And so I delivered the placenta here on my bed, and I was kind of like on all fours. And it's never really pleasant, honestly, to deliver a placenta. You're just like, "Ah, okay, let's just get this part over with." And I
Gotta
did
do
it.
it.
So I pushed out one, assuming that I had two for whatever reason. No, really, it was just one big one. So I was just still hanging out there on the bed while everyone was kind of tending to the babies and everything. And they're like, "Well, you can sit down now." And I was like, "Well, don't I have to do this again?" They're like, "No, no, no, no. It was all one big piece." I was like, "Oh, hurrah. We are
Oh,
done."
goodness.
uh,
Yeah, right.
the placenta was awesome. Like, it was huge, and just like, I don't know, women should be proud of the work they do in building that thing. Like,
It's like a
they're
whole
making a
organ.
baby, they're making a placenta. Like, it's mind blowing and awesome. And it was great. I really got to check it out. Like, I was super interested in, where the cords were attached and everything, since there were two. And it was just pretty much the same as a normal one, just bigger and double. So, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. And then, so in that sort of, so it sounded like you had lots of help with the babies, which is really beautiful, because obviously there's a lot of things going on. You've got a placenta to birth, you've got two infants, not
Mhm.
just one. So you can't even like, there's a whole learning process for holding them and carrying them, I'm sure.
And, the midwives were wonderful. Like, the room was full, but you wouldn't know it. I mean, there were two midwives,
Hmm.
my husband and my sister and me. So that's 5 people. It's not a
Yeah.
huge room. But it was still super sacred and super
Mm.
calm and very quiet. No one was, I mean, the babies weren't even really, they were fussing a little bit, but no one was crying. And it was just peaceful and
Mm.
exactly what you want. I mean, you had your babies in your bedroom and then you lay down on your bed and someone hands you a baby and someone has another baby. It did feel like there were a lot of babies around. I will say that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, beautiful. And so then in the weeks and sort of months after that, what kind of adjustments and learning? Like you'd obviously had two children before, but not consecutively. What were your like learnings and what new skills did you have to find to parent twins?
Um, Basically, I just sat around and nursed babies nonstop. I just was nursing all of the time. And I thought, I had done my best research and read plenty of stories of how people did things, but you really just have to navigate your way through all of the messiness and just do what works for you.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I luckily I have a really large bed. We have a king size bed and I just kept both babies with me and one was on one side and one was on the other side and I would just put pillows up underneath me to hold them up and just lay them here to nurse. And
Mm-hmm.
um gosh, I just feel like they just ate nonstop. If one was eating, the other was eating. And for a while they're so tiny and they have to eat all of the time. So like there's not really much scheduling going on. I did
Mm-hmm.
if I changed one of them, I changed the other one at the same time.
Mm.
Just because I was like, well, you're gonna poop sooner or later if your sister did or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we cloth diapered from the beginning.
Wow.
And that actually was really, we had cloth diapered our other two before, so that wasn't too much of a big deal. But really, I just knew that we couldn't afford that many diapers, to be quite honest.
Yeah. There's a lot of diapers for
I
sure. It's a
tell
big
people,
expense.
people like look at our lifestyle sometime like, oh, I could never do that, the cloth diapering or the nursing or the co-sleeping or whatever. And I said, I'm really, it's nothing special. I'm actually just kind of lazy, to be honest. I'm lazy and I'm cheap. I want to sleep. And,
For real.
I know that not every family can do what we did or maybe be able to nurse two children at a time or whatever. But I really do feel that when your birth is as normal and natural as it can be with as few interventions as possible, that a lot of those postpartum things will just sort of will work out on their own, like your milk supply and everything. You've never been separated from your baby. You didn't have a lot of stress during your birth. And it really just kind of worked out beautifully. I did. So I had read a lot about boy girl twins and different kinds of birth or different kinds of breast milk.
Mm.
How your body can make a breast milk for a boy or for a girl or for whatever that specific baby needs.
Mm-hmm.
So at first I didn't want to have I'm actually like holding my boobs right now thinking about it. That's funny.
Totally fine.
Yeah, I switched them back and forth just to keep things even at first.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then after a while, and I wish I knew how long I did, but after a while I stuck to my son on the right and my daughter on the left. And that was their side. And to this day, that's where they sleep. My son sleeps on my right and my daughter on my left. And they just kind of go into their spots that they have since the day they were born. And it's, I think about it every night when we go to sleep. I'm like, this is your spot. And so thinking, okay, if this is the boys' milk over here and this is the girls' milk over here and whatever they need, I'm going to take care of it. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's super beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. It's so incredible how our bodies can just create milk for different babies and different things wherever they're at. And I really appreciate that. And I love the wisdom you shared there too about this idea that when you have a more natural birth, when you have a physiological autonomous birth, a lot of the challenges of postpartum disappear because your body's hormones have been perfectly set up for the journey of breastfeeding, for all of that. So yeah, it's good
Everything
wisdom there.
aligned in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned earlier your husband had gone to church sort of before you went into labor there. I'm curious because, lots of different people have different faith journeys. I'm curious about how your faith might have impacted your experience of labor, pregnancy, trust, that kind of thing.
Um, that's a really great question that I've never thought of before. But my first, the answer that pops right into my head is earlier in the pregnancy when I was extremely sick. Um, Praying and like sort of prayer meditation, I would say, is what about the only way that I could help myself keep food
Hmm.
in my body. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't know, I wouldn't, praying for me has always been hard. My mind wanders. It feels like, I don't know. But meditation is easy for me. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure why, but kind of marrying those two together, um, with some like guided meditation. So I just found some stuff on YouTube, honestly, to like, okay, how does one meditate? What do you focus on? Just really diving into it and learning about it for the very first time in my life at that point.
Hmm.
Um, and sort of combining that with a sort of subtle, not like the praying that I grew up with was sort of like, dear God, thank you for this day, or thank you for this food, or, please pray for my spelling test, or, like very like legit conversation. And this prayer meditation, for what it's worth, for me was more of, gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. More of a just being in the presence of something holy,
Hmm.
just focusing on, um, God, and I knew his wishes for this family, and wanting us to be happy and healthy, and just focusing on, um, his will for our family and the decisions that we are making to best suit our family. And I would just sort of just kind of focus on that light, for lack of better terms,
Hmm.
of just the positivity and the protection that he was giving us, and not really words necessarily, but more of a feeling, I guess.
Beautiful.
And honestly, that didn't really have anything to do with the way I was raised, or the church
Hmm.
that I was brought up in, or anything. It was just sort of a relationship, more relationship
Hmm.
building with God, and Jesus as my savior, that I had at the time,
Yeah.
versus, um, I don't know, maybe if I was Catholic, I would have been able to like say a lot of very specific prayers or something, but I didn't know any of those. I didn't grow up,
Hmm.
like mantras or anything. So I sort of made up my own, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful that you mentioned the feeling of it, because so often when I talk to people, they're sort of maybe struggling with meditation or with prayer or with their spiritual journey. A lot of it is up here,
Hmm.
and it's sort of missing from the heart space. So when you talked about the feeling, you're like, oh, more than words, it was more like a feeling of like, oh, we're cared for. This is aligned with for our family's best interests. Like
Hmm.
I'm saying words, but there's feeling associated with it. I could tell when you were talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, got that like alive, that Christ spirit alive in your heart,
Hmm.
knowing that like everything's forgiven, everything's okay, everything's like
Hmm.
beautiful. It's all in alignment with the big divine plan. So I really
Right.
appreciate
Yes.
that.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a good way to put it. Hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so then, I mean, you mentioned earlier you've got a farm, you've got a whole bunch of other sort of alternative things. You mentioned like diapering, co-sleeping, da, 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 da.
All the
What
things.
what what got you? I mean, how did you end up with a farm? How did that happen?
Oh gosh. Okay. This is gonna sound super crazy, but cloth diapering. Cloth
Okay.
diapering on its own started the entire cascade journey onto all of this. And it all happened, with my very first child. Um, Gosh, this might have been 10 years ago or so. We walked in, and I had always been health conscious, but also not like, yeah, because I was health conscious because I was super into working out and stuff like that. Not
Right.
because whatever. We walked into this health food store, and it was when we lived near Kalamazoo, Michigan. And we walked into the store that is unfortunately no longer in business, but they had cloth diapers there. And I had just read an article about, the amount of petroleum in diapers, and the fact that every single child in history who has ever worn a diaper, that their diaper is still in a landfill somewhere because they never break down, So I
Yeah.
just kind of like read a couple articles about it, and I saw it at the store. It was sort of like things were lining up, and I grabbed a few. And because of those cloth diapering blogs, all of those same families that did that also did other things like
Right.
breastfeeding and natural birth and co-sleeping, and one thing kind of led to another. And once I get my hooks in something, I like can't stop until I've got it all figured out, so I just kept reading and devouring, and they're doing this and this, and it was kind of one thing after another. And that's where the whole business of being born thing came from. Well, I guess I have to watch this now, and
Right.
one thing led to another. And as far as like the farming piece of it and the lifestyle there, I had grown up in the country. My family are farmers, but it was all very conventional, like the regular, like put in the corn and beans type farming and show up for it.
Mhm.
And I did FFA and all those kind of things. And I actually have an agricultural degree, believe it or not. But I I don't know. I just sort of internalized it along the way of the journey of learning about a more natural life, and that was not
Mhm.
necessarily how I was raised. Um, but I just sort of came into it, and one day I had one child. I'm at TSC for, I don't even know, dog food maybe, and I just randomly bought chickens, and that was like, you know, I don't even know what happened there, but 12 chickens later, my husband comes home, and I was like, so I did something, and I need you to build me a chicken coop, and this is how we're going to live now. And it was just one thing after another. And pretty soon, the house is full of fermenting food and kombucha, and I'm getting raw milk.
Yes.
And it was just, I had grown up gardening and canning and everything, but now I'm an adult, and I have this family to feed and the son to raise a certain way. And we have to be conscious of what we're putting into our bodies, because it's not just us anymore. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, that's how the journey began. And, now I have the windows closed because our dang rooster lives like right outside my window, and he's so loud. And, I just love, the chickens never stop laying, and the cow never stops giving milk. And it's just wonderful to know that the things that I put in my children's bodies like are very, I've thought about them, and we've made conscious steps to choose these things to eat and these ways to build our bodies and have our babies, and take control of our health and those kind of things. And now in my kitchen there's like 30 pounds of lard rendering. I don't even know
Yes. Yes.
where all
Yes.
these funny things come from, but I just make a delivery. Like I called my mom. I'm like, so I have way more lard than usual, in fact, like enough for the whole county, so do you have any room in your freezer? Just like hilarious conversations like that now are
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
normal. I love it. I really do.
I mean, it is a rabbit hole for sure. Like if you were to tell myself from 10 years ago, I was into all the kombucha and fermented vegetables and
Yeah.
off-grid living and all that stuff that I'm into now, like I wouldn't have believed you, but here I
Yeah.
am. And it's like, once you know one thing, you go like, oh, okay, but like, where is actually that being sourced, and who's actually growing that? And
Mhm.
what goes into the stuff that makes it grow? And what exactly is that journey? And when you've got your own cow and your own chickens and you are feeding them, you know exactly what's going into them. You know exactly what that content is. And,
Yeah,
especially if you're taking
yeah,
garden scraps and feeding them to the chickens, like, what's there.
now I won't say I love my chickens, because they're kind of like tiny dinosaurs. They're crazy creatures if people have no idea. But like I love my cow. I really do. And I truly believe that when the places where your food comes from are happy and well cared for and loved, that's in your food. I'm telling you. I don't
Mm.
know if science can prove it yet, but logically it makes plenty of sense. So
Well, and we think about like breastfeeding moms and their stress levels, right?
yeah.
Like that's a really clear, great example. We think breastfeeding moms who have high stress, they have trouble with their lactation, they have trouble with production, it's challenging. well cared for, loved, respected, nurtured moms generally have much less issues with their breastfeeding journey. So
Yeah, good
we
point.
can see in humans, right? Okay, so then in cows, it's like stressed out cows are going to be doing one thing that, it's going to go in, and hopefully you can use that in the future somewhere.
Yeah, I will. I will try to quote you on that. Why do we forget that we are not so much different than animals? I don't know why we always forget that, but you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this last year has been such a journey for me of being like, I think I am an animal. I think
Mm.
actually this thing here, this is actually an animal. And then there's
Well,
some other consciousness thing going on that's also present in this animal. It's been a wild journey.
well, during birth, honestly, I think is the time when you realize just how primal you are, like as
Hmm.
a human being, because it is not um it's not you anymore. It's not the you that was before labor. It's this primal being that sort of takes over in all of the best ways. That sounds kind of creepy or whatever, but isn't it Ina May Gaskin, what does she say? Like let the monkey out or something like that. I swear there's a quote that she has out there that's
Yeah.
um oh gosh, I lost it. I'm sorry, but something like
Okay.
that. Just the primal part of your body that takes over and does exactly what it's supposed to do. And
Hmm.
my dad said later, apparently he came over at some point during the twins' birth. I didn't know this. I learned afterward to bring ice. And he brought the ice in. He's like, and I got out of there as soon as possible because you were just roaring in there. And I was like, yes, that's what I do. It's kind of like a lioness, I suppose. But he's like,
Hmm.
yeah, in not so many terms, it sounded pretty powerful. And I knew I had to get out of there. I'm like, okay, Dad.
Yeah. 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 I mean, we are wonderful, beautiful, primal beings. And when we let that part lead the way in that delivery and that like birth process, I think often it goes better because it's like it's not the thinking, planning, rational, okay, next Tuesday the baby will be born. It's not that part that's running the show. It's like back here with the lizard brain going,
Yeah,
am I safe? Am I okay? Okay, I'm safe. Great. Let's take it one step deeper, see what happens.
right. And I don't know if I could be like that in any other setting than my home.
Mm,
Um,
right.
and I have, um, as a birth doula, I haven't taken any clients actually since the twins were born. It just
Mm,
our family lifestyle has changed a lot since then, and I need to be home like as the anchor. But
yeah.
m- all of my clients, 100% of my clients, chose a hospital birth.
Mm,
And so I was, very used to the hospital setting and supporting moms there and trying to create the most safe and quiet setting for them in the hospital. But
mm-hmm.
no matter what, you still have to have um, that front part of your brain that you're talking about. It still has to be turned on because you still have to. You're in somebody else's place. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to navigate by their rules, and you have to answer their questions. Um, and so it's impossible to be able to turn that part of your brain off and turn the other more primal part of your brain to kind of let it loose because in not so many terms you're still kind of trying to mind your manners in a way,
Yeah.
not like you're not going to be yourself. I may have not been nearly as loud and as messy and wherever I wanted to be if I was in
Yeah.
the hospital. And that is why I think that a good doula is so important because they can sort of be that bridge for you and
Mm,
remind that birthing mom, you can do that. You can be as loud as
mm-hmm.
you want. You can be over here. You can be on the rocking chair. You can be totally naked. You can wear all of your clothes. You can do whatever you want because otherwise you're kind of tiptoeing around, I think. And as women, unfortunately, we feel like we have to behave, we've
Yeah.
been taught like a certain line of behavior. And with so many others watching and coming and going, you're kind of trying to hold yourself up to a standard that you don't is not needed at that time at all. You know what I mean?
Not helpful to be prim and proper and like a great hostess. I mean, I know that some
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
clients that I've worked with, they have to go through this journey of going, actually, you can't come to my birth. You had mom, sister,
Mhm.
husband all there, right? And makes sense with a twin birth to have more hands on deck. Absolutely. But a lot of the ladies that I've worked with, they've got this experience of, oh, like a helpful mom wants to be there, but mom's actually full of worry. And it's like, gosh, if you're entertaining your mom or your mother-in-law, or if you need to like make sure the tea and cookies are out and the meals are ready, like if you're in any percentage of that headspace, it's like, that is not the birthing headspace. Anybody who's in that space has got to be fully there to serve you what you need. That might be leaving, that might be exiting the house completely. It might be like, that level of communication and clarity needs to be there, and not worrying about whether you hurt their feelings, because you can, like, a lot of ladies have this like primal sort of like sort of bitch quality come forward while they're pregnant, while they're in that delivery space, and like by all means, because they know what they need in order to birth the baby, and it's just getting, the filters are coming off the further you get along that journey. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You don't need to worry about, please and thank you, and like, everyone else is taken care of at the time, and yeah, that's right.
Yeah, super important. Yeah, beautiful.
And I can't count how many times I've had a client like apologize about stuff, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't even know. I'm trying to think of an instance, but just if they're loud, or if they're like swearing about stuff or whatever, like, oh, I didn't, like, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
And just to be as comfortable and as safe wherever you are. And then your body can do the work that it needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the same goes with like those early prenatals. Like you mentioned having 3 midwives there and just feeling like celebrated, and sort of like this little hens party. Everybody's like, cluck, 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 like super happy and beautiful. And like, that's the kind of energy that we want. Again, a lot of the women that I work with, they've got this experience where, they're sort of, they've got to get their elbows up and say, you can't, I don't actually want to do this. I don't want to do that. And sort of like this fighting off energy. And it can be really simpler to just pull back and say, hey, I'm going to do this the way I want to do it, and not have to engage with those. I remember in my pregnancy experience with my son, going to all these like Western doctor checkup appointments while I was pregnant and thinking they were just stupid. To think, why am I here? What am I doing? Like, why am I even here? How, I had a whole bunch of questions. They weren't really interested in answering my questions. They wanted the things they wanted. And I love to give ladies permission to go, well, if that's the situation you're in, you're setting yourself up for potentially a more challenging outcome, something more like your first birth or my first birth, where it's like, this is not functioning for supporting, the birthing mama, the one who's really important, who's like holding all the cards and knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. And if you're always on the defensive from the beginning, that's just not what you want surrounding you at all. And I think that defensiveness in a way can also lead to a little bit of fear, because you start sort of, if you're hearing all of these things that can go wrong all of the time, or if you're always being tested for everything that could go wrong, that's all you're going to think about, I think. And you're really going to think of all the horrible things that could happen, and not that one shouldn't plan for those. I had a backup OB, I had 3 midwives, like I took the proper steps to make sure that everything was covered. But once those were covered, I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I had faith in the process, and I didn't fear anything. And I know that, for some women, that's not the case. Maybe if they don't want to have a home birth, or they've thought about it, but they're just like, I'm afraid that something would go wrong or whatever. Well, if that's the case, and if you can't overcome that from your research or working with your midwife or whatever, then by all means, have your baby wherever you feel the safest, because that is where, like, when you can get rid of your fear, then I feel like everything else kind of lines up on its own. And if you feel safe and taken care of, then you can have your baby, then you can do your job. You don't have to put your elbows up anywhere, like you mentioned earlier, and fight to get anything that you need, or keep yourself or your unborn baby safe. You don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. And absolutely, like wherever women feel safest is the best place for them. I think I mean, for me, it also involves, like, for me, the hospital doesn't feel like the safest place because I've already been through that journey once. And part of my messaging and what's important to me is to go, like, listen to the other people's birth stories, go listen to some like home birthing birth stories and hear, what it took them to get to that point. The first time home birthing mom is like such a beautiful unicorn in my world, because you're like, oh, like you made the connections. You didn't have to go through the trauma to figure out what we then figured out, through some challenge. Like you and I figured out through some challenge. Other people can.
Yeah.
Right. But that is relatively rare in terms of people choosing that journey. And so I think it's really important to hear that, you may actually feel like the hospital is the safest place, but that doesn't actually mean it's the safest place. And there is psychological sort of like beliefs and you don't have to have those beliefs shattered in a terrible birth experience in order to undo those beliefs. You can absolutely like learn how to change your inner psyche yourself, or get support from somebody to do that kind of work, to shift those things around so that, you can, I say with the NLP stuff that I've studied, it's like anything can be reprogrammed. I used to think that bread pasta was like the most delicious thing in the world, but it was causing me issue. Right. It was causing me issue in my guts. So I had to reprogram. I had to rewire it. I went like, oh, bread pasta, it equates to like mom love in my brain. I feel loved by my mom every time I eat it. Oh, okay. Can I pull mom love and put it right here in my heart and take the bread and pasta and put it back on the shelf? This is my journey. Not everybody needs to do this with these substances. But for me, it was like, oh, like we can tease these things that are really enmeshed and tease them apart to the point where we can go, okay, which pieces of this puzzle are still really valuable for the conversation that I'm in now? Okay, we're going to take, safety, supportive women around me, people who know what they're talking about birth, and we're going to take those, we're going to keep them. And then we're going to take, like interventions and, pressure and rushedness and getting told what to do. And we're going to put them on a shelf away from me. Right. And they don't have to be stuck together. They can be, like you said, with your story, with your midwives, they can be really in different places. You can have really supportive midwives who aren't telling you what to do until it's a moment when, maybe they actually do know better in that moment. And they're like, they are sharing that with you. So yeah.
That's why you have them. I mean, honestly, I don't think that anyone even put their hands on me, like physically, other than checking a heart rate here and there. But I did it all myself until their expertise was needed. And that's why I have them. You know how to birth a breech baby. Let's go ahead and do that. Now you have the experience. And I remember looking to them as well, like, okay, what do I need to do next? Because I don't know right now. And then she told me you need to sit on the bed here and just lean here. And then it was just very, just a perfect working relationship, and we were very comfortable together because she'd been my care provider the whole way through. Unlike sometimes, you show up at the hospital, oh, I'm sorry, your doctor isn't here tonight or whatever. And, oh, they're not on shift until 7 a.m. Or so there's always something that you're giving up, that you have to make do with. And I didn't have to do that at all. And that's why I say, like, it was just the one thing that I wish I would have had is either a photographer or a videographer. I'm like, oh, because honestly, I hate to like toot my own horn really, but this was such a perfect birth. And I want to be able to show people that this is what you can have this too. Like it's normal and it's great. And all those rare things like in home birth after cesarean and a home birth with twins and babies being born in the caul and one of them breached, like all of those things, maybe they used to happen a lot more. We just don't even know about them anymore because every baby is sort of born the same way in the hospital or whatever. But these cool variations of normal that shouldn't cause any fear at all can be super beautiful and healthy, everything healthy and normal. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. A lot more home birth babies are born en-caul because there's less interventions like stripping of membranes. That's going to break your water, breaking your water intentionally. That's going to break your water. All of these sort of like invasive vaginal things that can happen during monitored, managed hospital birth are going to make it less likely that those babies are born en-caul. And, also from some of the reading I've done, babies born en-caul, especially twins, like they come out better because there's less sort of like gangly arms and legs and stuff. They're just like a sack. It's like we're birthing this sack, then we're birthing that sack. There's soft, smooth, slimy, so like, whoop. And then, like you said, your daughter kicked hers open, and your son like had a little bit of help to get out, and but all of that's totally normal within the realm of normal. Yeah, beautiful. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with me or with listeners before we wrap up today?
Oh gosh, I don't think so. I think, just those couple things, little piece of advice. If I could go back and tell myself, take a birth class, and I've read somewhere before, like that women spend, how many hours they spend picking out their wedding dress versus planning their birth. And, and how crazy those two things are. But it's true. We really do trust, at least I did before, our medical system, that they will take care of us. And not that they won't, but at the same time, it's your birth and it's your journey. And I think it's very important to empower yourself and figure out exactly, pinpoint those things in your life that you might be afraid of. And like how you're talking about unpacking all those previous things that had affected you, culturally or whatever, about how you think that birth should be or where you feel safe. And just, gosh, read a bunch of books and take all the birth classes. And let's make more unicorns, right? Let's make more first time home birthing moms. So I never even looked at that way. And you're right. Most of the people I know that have had a home birth, it's because something happened the first time. And we start at one side of it. And I like swang way over to the other side. Like I just took off running, like, as far away as I can get from whatever happened to me. And gosh, if we don't have to do that, imagine the beautiful babies and mothers and the relationships that they're going to have and all the problems that we're going to solve without even trying, like with breastfeeding and postpartum depression and all of those things. And that journey can certainly be softened if we help people right from the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we can help them create a different path, it can be a really, really different outcome. And I'm really passionate about it.
The more we talk about it and the more we normalize it, that's how it's going to happen. Because gosh, I think that's part of what makes breastfeeding a little easier now, is because everyone is doing it wherever you go. Not a big deal. You're just feeding your baby. At least I hope that is for most people. That was my experience. And it's the same thing. Like if we would have grown up, 200 years ago, we probably would have seen our siblings being born or something like that. And it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. And now maybe the first baby that we've ever going to see be born is our own, and so to normalize that for not only ourselves, but then for our children and their siblings, like that's just normal in our house. And, for a while, my kids would get in the bathtub and play water birth. Like what? Like who are those kids? But to normalize that and to normalize talking about it and just exploring it and to have questions and to be able to ask your care provider questions is good and okay. And it's not questioning the system or anything. It's just help me out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What a pleasure. I feel like we could go on and on forever. We didn't even touch on our mutual love of kombucha,
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I just want to honor your time and our listeners' time today and sort of wrap up for today. But I'd absolutely love to have you back on the show if there's something else you'd like to share about. And just really grateful for your time today.
Thank you. I'm always happy to share my story because, it was a super beautiful time and empowering time in my life. That's about the only reason why I would have another child, is just so I could have another birth. But I'm so terrified that it would be twins again. We thought, hey, maybe we could have one more kid. I'm like, because it's going to be two. And I don't think I want six children. So yeah, but thank you
Why do you
so
think it would be two? Why do you think it would be two?
I don't know. So my son was a twin, and I mentioned that earlier, right in the conversation that
Right.
that happened, and then a singleton daughter and the twin kids. I just feel like that's what God would do. He's like, all right, yeah, you think you're really big and you think you got this down. How about another two? Let's see. Let's humble you a little bit with this. And honestly, we thought we'd have three, and it was this whole buy one get one free situation with the twins. And I have just been hearing of so many women having surprise twins, not surprise, but not planning anything or not trying to have two and ending up with twins in my world right now, that
Mm.
I don't know what's going on and I don't know why, but I feel like it's something big. For so many people to be blessed with two at a time, because let me tell you, we are not designed to have two babies at a time. It's something
Generally singletons, right? There's a reason
something
it's
very weird.
pretty uncommon in the human
Yeah,
population, right? It's because it's a big journey. And
it is. It
yeah,
is. But you're right. Thank you for having me so I could share this with whomever today. Hopefully it helps somebody down the road.
absolutely. Yeah. And I hope you share this with, if you've got all these twin mamas coming in, it's like, here's my story. Here's some things I wish I would have known. And I'm so grateful to hear your story and be like, oh, like here's a twin home birth story that doesn't end up with a hospital transfer, that doesn't have these sort of like these more, because for a while I was listening to free birth stories about twins. Like I'm looking all over, right? Because my partner's a twin. And I found a lot of stories where people will home birth their kids, but then they end up going to hospital anyway, because there's something in the psychology that says like, oh, this is like still an emergency. So for me, I'm looking for all the stories where the ladies stay at home. They go, this is nice. We're happy being at home. So I'm
Yeah.
really grateful for the story today.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachelle. I really appreciate your time.
All right. You're welcome. Have a good day. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end.
How easily can you imagine that this experience is integrated already deeply into every cell of your being in such a way that you will begin to notice that you have already been operating from this new behavior for a while, and that it was simply a matter of noticing how much you've already been doing this. You may choose to feel that this moment is the moment that completely and utterly into your body, or in the days and weeks ahead, getting curious about how fully and completely this experience has transformed your life, realizing that you are a complete choice to choose how you would like to integrate this information into every cell of your being.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Joygasmic Life podcast. And I am so grateful to have you here and be a part of it. If you haven't already, head over to joygasm.me to check out our Joygasmic Birth Blueprint ebook and course, which give you all of the information that you need to become a Joygasmic mama, whether you are postpartum or whether you're expecting your first baby. This course absolutely has tips and tricks for you that will help prepare you for birth, prepare you for the birth of your next child, and prepare you for peaceful and joygasmic mothering on the other side. So absolutely. The way that we do one thing is the way that we do everything. And so by utilizing and beginning to build a practice of joygasmic alchemy, you will absolutely become a better mother and hold space, as I am and as many, many women are, for the enlightenment of the planet. We do that first by working on ourselves and then offering that support and that enlightened nature within ourselves to our families. And then from there, it ripples out. So if you haven't already checked that out, go check that out now. Again, it's joygasm.me. We've also got courses on rescuing your relationship, Bulletproof Mom, how to be able to handle even the most intense toddler or special needs child later on in life, as well as a multitude of new courses that are coming out. We're absolutely grateful to get to have you as a part of that. And remember, anyone who participates in the funding of the podcast absolutely gets a membership access, which allows you to access the bonus features, the ends of some of our episodes, exercises from our guests, as well as featured free content from them. So super glad to have all of you who are a part of that already here. And thank you so much for being a part of the Joygasmic Life family. If I could leave you with only one tip for how to be an orgasmic, joygasmic mama in this world, the invite would be to really step into and embody the knowledge that you are actually here for a reason, and that reason is to be an enlightened being for your family. They chose you for a reason. They chose you on this consciousness journey for a reason. And you absolutely have the tools and skills to be able to do this. If you're struggling, please reach out. I am more than happy to help people rewire what's going on in their brain, create a new story, and create a more powerful experience so you can be the kind of mama for your kids that you really have dreamed of. You absolutely deserve it, and your children absolutely deserve it. I look forward to getting to know you more, and I look forward to co-creating through the membership content. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you on the next podcast.